So we're here with the Ubers World Cup Finals, the final game in the tiebreaker. We have India on the left and Oceania on the right. So it's basically Gen 4 Ubers, and we're going to see the lead matchup. We're going to see Kyogre into Deoxys Speed. Now, this is a pretty typical lead matchup in Gen 4. So Stealth Rock into Water Spout into Focus Sash. And I'm going to pause the video here. We're going to get one more layer of spikes and Water Spout goes up. And India takes a 6-5 lead here. Now, why would you do that? The idea is basically that you're trying to justify your hazards. You lose an entire Pokemon, you go down 6-5, but you have Stealth Rock and Spikes getting residual damage every turn. It's a conflicting idea, it's asymmetrical for how you want to approach the game. The reason the hazards idea is so good is that in Generation 4 there's no defog. So the only way to remove a Stealth Rock or Spikes is through Rapid Spin. But Rapid Spin can get blocked by Ghost-type Pokemon like Giratina Origin, which is extremely popular in the Ubers tier in Gen 4. To add on to that, in Generation 4, no legendary Pokemon gets Rapid Spin. So if you do want a Rapid Spin Pokemon, you'd have to go down a little deeper and go to your non-legendary Pokemon like Tentacruel or Fortress. Fortress is the main idea, but typically what that means is you're picking up a Pokemon who's not a legendary Pokemon. So it's kind of an inherent disadvantage if you want to use hazard removal. All this leads to hazards being extremely strong, and the way you approach hazards is very important. Typically, the idea is you want to get hazards up in the lead, and that's what Deoxys Speed is meant to do. It outspeeds everything, it can taunt an opposing hazard lead, and it gets up Stealth Rock and Spikes and Feints. The value you get from that is so high, you're willing to give up an entire Pokemon to do it. And now the obvious question is, why do you have to give up an entire Pokemon to do it? Can't you just do it without giving up a Pokemon? The answer is yes and no. The answer is yes, and many strategies do involve that, not giving up a Pokemon to get up Stealth Rock. But the problem is that you have to understand that the opponent is also going to be capable of making moves, and every time you're not attacking, your opponent is attacking. And typically, your opponent's not going to let you get up hazards for free whenever you want. Your opponent is going to be attacking you, disrupting your plans. The idea with these sacrifice type leads is that in exchange for not being able to be disturbed, you often do have to sacrifice an entire Pokemon. Here you can see the Kyogre is disrupting the Deoxys strategy from getting every single spike up. That is the key idea and the asymmetrical approach to playing this game. One person is going for immediate damage right out of the gate, meanwhile the other person is going for spikes and hoping that the investment pays off over time. Then we see Palkia come in and it's already paying off because Kyogre has to switch out. Typically, if you have Water Spout, you're going to almost always be Choice Scarf or Choice Specs, because you really don't want to be Water Spouting from a low HP value, so you want to get in, outspeed, and then get the damage off with a Choice Scarf, for example. So Palkia knows Kyogre's in trouble. Kyogre's going to have to switch out. The switch in coming in is going to have to take Stealth Rock and Spikes, and you're already getting value out of the hazards, and that's the main idea of the opening lead. He goes to Dialga on Palkia. It takes a Thunder, and this is really important here because it reveals that the Dialga is very specially invested in nature. It's incredibly difficult to take Palkia on, so he's using a maximum special defense on Dialga because Dialga's typing is one of the few Pokemon that can match up into Palkia. So now the Dialga is able to basically counter the Palkia. It's going to live the next Dragon type attack from Palkia, and then it can do whatever it wants like Draco Meteor. It can even get Stealth Rock here. Overall, a really good situation for the Dialga. Palkia attacks, but it gets a critical hit and knocks out Dialga completely. And that is a huge deal because the idea would have been to live that hit and then Draco Meteor knock out Palkia, even get Stealth Rock, for example. And as we found out after the game, it's actually a Custap Berry Dialga too. So the idea was very clearly to intentionally get hit by Spatial Rend, drop under 25% of HP, and then activate Custap the next turn to do whatever you want. So for example, they could have Draco'd on this turn, and then on the next turn used Custap Stealth Rock. Very unfortunate crit for Dialga, but now the next Pokemon comes in, and that is Kabutops. Now, what is Kabutops doing in Generation 4 Ubers? It's not a very good Pokemon overall. How is it competing against Deoxys and Dialga and Palkia? The key is the permanent reign of Kyogre, and that's why Kyogre was the lead. A more advanced player would have recognized, oh, if Kyogre is the lead, there must be a Kabutops in the back. The idea is Swift Swim with Rain is extremely powerful. Kabutops outspeeds every single legendary. Stone Edge is decently powerful, and Waterfall in the Rain is also incredibly powerful. Even though Kabutops is a Kabutops, because of Rain, it's actually very competitive in the Ubers format. It comes in right here, on a Palkia, and it literally one-hit KOs with Stone Edge. And as we found out after the game, that's apparently a very lucky roll. It doesn't KO the Palkia often. So kind of a tit for tat situation where the Dialga faints to a critical hit and the Palkia faints to a unlucky roll. Now how do you deal with the Kabutops? You go to Giratina. Now even though Giratina is going to take a lot from Stone Edge, you don't want to lose your Kabutops to Giratina. Kabutops is such a high value Pokemon, it's going to do a lot of damage long term. You don't want to do 70% to Giratina and then faint the next turn, so you kind of want to switch out, but every time you switch out, you're taking even more hazard damage. He goes to his Fortress here. It's going to take a big hit, but Thunder only does 37. Now, that means the Fortress is maximum special defense, and you can kind of get an idea of the team structure. Instead of being a full offensive hazard lead, it's more of a get your hazards later, maybe have Rapid Spin, but the problem is that Rapid Spin doesn't really work when there's a Giratina. Fortress cannot effectively Rapid Spin, it's going to have to do other things here. So the Giratina is going to capitalize, it's going to try and equalize the result, and here, just like how Deoxys was sacrificed for hazards, now Fortress is being sacrificed for hazards, but they do get a spike up, and now you have to deal with the Giratina. And how do you deal with the Giratina? You go to your own Giratina, and this is risky. Both Pokemon have to have the Grisius Orb, so there's no Choice Scarf stuff. Now this is either confidence or desperation. You don't know the speed EVs of the opponent, but you know the speed EVs of you. Either they felt that Giratina was the only way to beat their Giratina, or their maximum speed and they know that at least they have a speed tie, and if the opponent Giratina is even slower, they automatically win. So this could be a speed tie, we'll never know exactly, but they both go for the Giratina. If you're going to switch out, you're going to lose a lot of momentum. A Pokemon's going to get hit by Draco Meteor, which you don't want, so you're going to have to go for it right here, right now. And we see it's Giratina into Giratina, gets the Draco Meteor, and that's a 4-3 lead for India, and they go to Kyogre. Now, here's the problem. Giratina lost its special attack, so it's not going to be doing a lot of damage. And the Kyogre uses Thunder Wave, which means it's probably a bulky Kyogre. Instead of this Kyogre being Water Spout spam, this Kyogre is more defensive with Thunder Wave, maybe Surf. Very tricky to handle because every single turn it's going to gain Leftovers recovery. What do you really do versus that? He goes to his own Kyogre predicting Ice Beam onto Giratina, and now he's threatening his Choice Scarf Thunder into that Kyogre. Now how do you deal with that? And here he reveals he has a Tyranitar. Now Tyranitar is a big deal, not because it takes on Kyogre, which it does, but it also removes the Rain for Kabutops. Now Kabutops without Rain is a Kabutops. It's not a legendary Pokemon. It's going to be very tough to compete in the legendary Pokemon tier. So this Tyranitar causes a lot of problems, and ideally you want to switch your Kyogre out and then switch Kyogre back in later to reset the Rain. And truthfully, Kyogre is not going to be beating a Tyranitar long term anyway because you're going to hit Thunder with low accuracy into Tyranitar who can live the hit anyway, so what do you really do? Kyogre is going to try and switch out, get out of the Tyranitar, but Tyranitar uses Pursuit and removes Kyogre. And this is really bad. It puts the game to a 3 versus 3, and Kabutops without Rain is a Kabutops in a format with legendary Pokemon. It's going to be very tricky to justify Kabutops without your own Rain. If Kabutops is going to win, it's going to have to use the other Pokemon's Rain, the Kyogre's Rain. But in the short term, you still need to deal with Tyranitar, and what do? You go to Jirachi. Now Jirachi is very often Choice Scarf Iron Head with Serene Grace to have a 60% chance to flinch. Now how do you deal with that much flinch? If you go to Kyogre, odds are you might get flinched down. But even if you don't get flinched down, you created a very fundamental problem where your Rain is going to enable Kabutops. So you can't go to your own Kyogre here. You have to go to your final Pokemon, otherwise you're going to give up the game to Kabutops. He goes to his Jirachi, and you're going to see the most degenerate gaming interaction you'll ever see. It's two Choice Scarf Jirachi, both going for Iron Head, both are going to speed tie and go for a flinch. It is pure luck for whoever comes out on top because they're both the exact same Pokemon using Iron Head flinch. Either you get the flinch or you don't. And each Pokemon is getting whittled down over and over again. In a battle of pure luck, India's Jirachi goes down, and now you're in a really tough spot. How do you deal with Jirachi who can flinch you, and you really don't have a way to go against that flinch? You go to Giratina, and Giratina is going to have to fight through Iron Head flinch, and it's going to have to fight through that full paralysis, but if it can do that, it can beat Jirachi. But it has Shadow Sneak. Instead of even having to deal with that Iron Head flinch, it's going to move first and only deal with that full paralysis here. Shadow Sneak does 20, Iron Head does 28, not nearly good enough. You have one more shot and you get the KO here. You bring Kyogre in, and Kyogre's Rain is going to now help out Kabutops here. You get more damage with Shadow Sneak, Ice Beam knocks out Giratina, and it all comes down to this final moment. You have Kabutops with Stone Edge versus the mighty Kyogre. No other move will KO Kyogre, your only option is to use Stone Edge. If you hit, you win the Ubers World Cup, and if you don't hit, you don't win the Ubers World Cup. It all comes down to the final moment. Kabutops in Rain